In honor of International Day of Yoga, of course, is the perfect time to have this conversation. So, talk a bit about your origin story, if you would. What initially got you interested in yoga?
My yoga journey began at the tail end of my college years in Boulder, Colorado, while attending CU. I had actually found yoga by way of mat Pilates. I was doing like these little Pilates DVDs in my living room and thinking like, this is amazing. I'm using nothing more than my body to get strong, and I felt more centered, more confident in myself. And then a friend of mine was actually training to become a yoga teacher at the time with CorePower Yoga. So she needed some students to practice on. And I thought yoga was like something you just sort of did in your sweatpants and it wasn't going to like really get me super strong or whatever. But I took her practice class and I was like, whoa, this is a big deal. So I started taking more yoga classes with Core Power actually, and then moved home to San Diego after graduating. And I thought I was going to get into ecological tourism as my career path, but I really just kept on going with the yoga, feeling like I was at home anytime I was on my yoga mat, no matter where in the world I was traveling at the time. And yeah, I just developed this fascination with it as a system. I was so enthralled by how I felt doing more and more yoga practice, and just I wanted to learn more. So I signed myself up for that same teacher training that my friend had done. And now 17 years later, it's been my career this whole time, and I've gotten to do so many awesome things with it.
So, talk about how you've been able to bring yoga into companies.
Recently, I started working at one of our local biotech companies here in San Diego, in their wellness center. So I provide yoga classes as well as one-on-one yoga therapy for people who work for this company, whether they're scientists or working on the business side of it. I'm really helping a lot of individuals with chronic lower back pain or things that are kind of cropping up as they enter, more advanced age. Most excitingly, I'm getting to utilize my master's degree, which I focused all my research on maternal well-being, to help the company roll out a new benefit for mothers who are coming back from parental leave to do one-on-one yoga therapy, to aid in their transition back to work and improve their health and quality of life.
Sounds like an amazing company.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Incredible. Wow. I love that. And talk about the work you've done really to help mothers. I mean, you really have a specialty in helping women, but specifically mothers.
Oh, yeah. Probably the most helpful thing to the mothers was just letting them know that somebody cared and wanted to do something entirely for them. There's so much emphasis as a new mom, understandably, on what is good for the child, what will help them sleep better, what helps them develop, in a well-rounded way, and all of this. And, the mother's needs really kind of go by the wayside just in how we think of parenthood with a young child. So having become a mother myself in 2020, which of course had its own special flair due to pandemic era, I, was tasked with answering this question of like how to meet my own self-care needs, while undergoing the most profound change that I had ever gone through before. And yeah, so I interviewed a bunch of moms. I wanted to just develop a program that would really meet their needs. And what I found was that our needs were also similar and our experiences were also similar, that I was like, whoa, there is this universal quality about what moms are experiencing, particularly when their kids are under 5 years of age. And those 5 years, as we know, are the most prolific time of psychological development for young children, but it's also a really profound time for mothers themselves. We now know that this is termed matrescence. That's a term that was coined in the 1970s by Dana Raphael. and it's come back into the common parlance. So what I've been able to do for mothers is to just be a voice in this maternal wellness space and the maternal like kind of understanding that we're all going through something really profound, and it's very similar regardless of people's background and what they're going through in life and this and that. There's a universality to it. So I, in going through this myself, developed some very simplistic ways for moms to turn attention back to themselves with the understanding that where attention goes, vital energy flows. And there's not one mom I know who doesn't need an ounce more energy in her system just to feel her best and get through their day. So yeah, very simplistic yoga practices that are less about bouncing back to one's original shape, although that can happen over time with consistency, and really about turning attention to oneself and meeting those inner needs first.
What is your advice for somebody who's never done yoga before, and perhaps for that person that says, I can't afford a $30 yoga class, like the accessibility conversation. Where would you suggest they start?
Yes, I would suggest looking around in their local community, even at like a public library. These places often offer like free community classes, or if there's a great public park that one enjoys, you might kind of pull up that park online and see if there's like a yoga class that happens. These kinds of things are often free or donation based. And they're providing a good basis for that instructor to get some practice in the art of teaching, which is its own special thing. But I would say just start where you are, and like any practice is good practice. So even if if you stumble into a class setting and you're like, this isn't going to be it for me forever, like that's okay, because anytime you're drawing attention in and using the vital resources of your breath and your body and your awareness, it's going to have a net positive effect on you. So start with where you're at and do what you can.
Absolutely. And if folks can't get out to a class, obviously doing this in community is ideal because there's so much that we get from connecting with others and doing the collective class. But if somebody has a hard time even breaking away, perhaps they have a newborn at home and it just feels insurmountable to get to a class. Do you have any tips for them for doing things at home?
Yes.
App or a YouTube channel you like, or
Yes. Yeah. My answer to this is two parts. So, first of all, learn some things to do. And that's where, like, going on to YouTube, for example, can be really helpful. Yoga for Adrian is a really reliable source. I also have all of my Yoga for Mom Life videos up on YouTube, freely available to the world now. So, that is a good resource that is very tuned into the needs of mothers in particular. Though, again, it's yoga, it's for human beings. So, anybody. So learn some basic things, some basic yoga stretches you can do. Know that doing even one single yoga pose can change your entire day. You don't have to do a 60-minute class. You don't even have to do a 20-minute practice. Even just one really well done yoga pose can change everything for the better. So minimalism is definitely welcome in this approach. Once you have like maybe a handful of poses that you can do that you sort of remember how to perform on your own without needing to pull up a screen to do it, I really recommend that people practice yoga next to their bed before going to sleep. Particularly if you're tired, if you're lacking energy, and also if you're restless at the end of the night. 5 or 10 minutes of decent breathing, quality breathing with some basic yoga postures is an amazing way to get your body into a more restful state. It improves your sleep quality, and then you wake up feeling like more agile, more like less laden with the previous day's stress and tension.
such great advice. All right, I'm going to put that into practice. I love
Yes, it's the
that.
best because at the end of a yoga class, when you
Yeah.
lay down, it's
Yeah.
Shavasana. You just do that in your bed and go to sleep.
Brilliant. I love
Longest Shavasana ever.
that. That's fantastic. I love that so much. Would you briefly, Susanna, touch on the work you did in your master's program and in your thesis?
I used a dual framework to look at studies that had been prior studies that had been done about nature exposure, so spending time in nature and the positive mind-body effects that come from that, and also doing mind-body practices such as yoga and Pilates. Pilates is in there because it utilizes the breath so intensively that it fell into the category of things that I was looking at, which was what to suggest for women to do, for mothers to do in the first 5 years of their children's life, and how to make that an accessible, efficient thing where an effort for the body also has, a positive effect on the mind and one's relationships and the dynamics within their family. So I looked at all those studies and I analyzed them through integral theories for quadrants, which was developed by Ken Wilber, and that has to do with what is happening inside and outside of the individual and the collective. So it's like this like four quadrant thing. And then I kind of superimposed the 5 layers of the self that come from yoga philosophy, starting from the physical body, emanating out through the mind and all the other characteristics of us, the energy body and stuff, out into the most spiritual dimension, looking at how those studies kind of illuminated different parts of that, those four quadrants and those kind of layers of the self. So that was a really psychoactive response to your question.
That
But
was so interesting, amazing. It must have been fascinating work and research to do.
since we are coming up on International Day of Yoga, that holiday or that day of kind of commemorating the yoga tradition is chosen this time of year for a very special reason that's worth talking about, which is that it's chosen really close to the summer solstice. And so, if not on the summer solstice itself. And the reason for that is that yoga is an illuminating practice. Light and awareness they're kind of like two sides of the same coin in yoga. And so we celebrate the tradition of it, the practice of it, and how it shows up in our lives on this day where there's the most light, in our particular hemisphere at that time of year. And tying in some of the modern day science that's going into the practice of yoga with relation to this concept of light and awareness. And there are so few places where you can bow to one another and to say the light within me honors the light within you. Namaste. It's like, oh, what a precious thing.
Yes, exactly. If we could just spread that all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And we are.
Yes. We need more adoption though.
Totally. It's all good, I mean,
Yeah.
I live here in San Diego and there's yoga everywhere. And I'm like, this
Yes.
is we have a gourmet yoga scene here. I love it.
Yes. Good way to put it. Gourmet yoga. I love it. I love it. Well, Susanna, thank you so much for sharing about International Day of Yoga and your journey into yoga and your practice now.
Thank you so much, Felina. And I loved having you in my yoga class that day. That was very
Yay!
special.
Yes, you are an amazing teacher.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Thank you. Likewise. Namaste, dear one.
Namaste.
Thank you so much, Felina. This was a blast.